These are brand new pictures released by CENTCOM of U.S. Navy FA-18 Super Hornets aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, preparing for a nighttime combat mission during Operation Epic Fury on Wednesday. It comes as more U.S. troops arrive in the region and tensions reach a boiling point. Jonathan Hunt is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, Mike. And with those thousands of extra troops arriving over the weekend here, there is growing thought that some sort of ground operation by the U.S. could come soon. In the meantime, the U.S. and Israel on one side and Iran on the other continue their attacks. An Iranian missile struck in southern Israel today, some sort of chemical facility, we believe, and it sent huge plumes of smoke rising into the air in that region. A lot of residents in that area were told to keep their windows closed because of the toxic smoke that was coming from that particular Iranian strike. CENTCOM, meantime, has posted more video of what they say are strikes against Iranian military and regime targets in Tehran and on the outskirts of the Iranian capital. Now, those troops we were talking about, 2,500 Marines arriving aboard the USS Tripoli, which is now, we are told, in the region. That does not mean a ground operation is happening. What it does mean is the president has a lot more options now at his disposal. As for Iranian officials, they continue to criticize and even in some cases mock President Trump's decision-making. Listen here to the spokesman for the IRGC.
At one moment, he speaks of negotiations, and shortly afterward, he decides to manage the war. This unbalanced and deceitful individual has inflicted extensive damage on the people of the United States, Europe, and countries around the world, especially the countries of West Asia.
And the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament also mocked President Trump today. I'm not sure why we're showing that video now. That was supposed to be at the top. That's the attack in southern Israel that I was talking about at the top. But back to the Iranian speaker. He talked today on X about the president, and he again mocked what the president is doing in this war. He said the American goal appears to now be opening the Strait of Hormuz, which he pointed out was open before the U.S. and Israel started their bombing campaign. Mike?
Jonathan Hunt live in Tel Aviv. We will head back to you if there's breaking developments. Jonathan, thanks very much. Let's bring in Congressman Rick Crawford of the great state of Arkansas, also the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, welcome.
Thanks.
So we've got Marines heading to the region, 82nd Airborne heading to the region. What is your assessment of where we are in this military operation against the Iranian regime?
Well, the president has demonstrated a heck of a lot of backbone here where other presidents wouldn't. I mean, in my lifetime, we've seen Iran has been a pervasive threat since 1979. We've been at war for 47 years with Iran. And this is really the first president, and no disrespect to President Reagan, because I served under him in the military and had, very much respect for him. He took some initiative back in 1988, which was absolutely necessary, but didn't finish the job. And as a result, the Iranians continued to foment hegemony in the region, continue to act out on American targets, and so on. So this president has demonstrated it's over, and he's taken control. Now you see the strikes that you're showing on the air right now demonstrate the level of precision and the thousands of targets that have been taken out as a result of this leadership. So I don't think Iran and their propagandists are in any position to be mocking the United States, and I would advise that they don't do that. In fact, if they asked my opinion, I would say you probably want to sit down and negotiate a deal, because this is not going to end well for you.
I want to play a clip from retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler, and I'll get you to react to it, sir.
Sure.
Down in here in the Straits of Hormuz, you've got several small islands that the previous regime, the Shah, actually took from UAE that control access from the Persian Gulf side to the Straits. This is one potential target of the Marines for insertion, and maybe even the Army forces to flow in afterwards. It's about building confidence that any threat will be dealt with. The Marines provide a lot of options, to include riding on the ships and providing point defense as the ships go through that strait as well.
What do you expect the mission will be of the Marines and the 82nd Airborne there in the region? Or is it providing flexibility to the commander-in-chief? I
think this provides a heck of a lot of options to the president, no question about it. And if you think about what the Marines do, they respond quickly. They can do a variety of things, but they are basically there as the initial responder based on the president's orders if and when that becomes necessary. And they have about a 15-day window during which they operate and provide a complete complement of options to the president. And then we have the larger sustained force coming in behind potentially if that's necessary, indicated like the 82nd Airborne as an example, as a quick response force as well. So again, what this does is provide the president with more options, and it should send a pretty clear message to the Iranians that this is not the time to be mocking and tempting fate. 30 seconds, sir. Are you confident the United States can leave Iran in a much better place soon? Absolutely. This is right now rests in the hands of what's left of the Iranian leadership, which has been pretty well decimated and caused some pretty bad decision making over the course of the last month. But certainly this can end well if the Iranian people have the ability to rise up and take control of their country and see that they can engage in self-determination on their own terms. House Intelligence Chairman Rick Crawford, grateful for your time today, sir. Thanks very much. You bet. Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.